Hi, second graders. Welcome to Dr. Seuss Week. This week for your STEAM videos and during literacy, we are going to read a lot of books by Dr. Seuss. So some of these may look familiar to you, and the name Dr. Seuss might sound familiar to you as well. So today we are going to learn a little bit more about who Dr. Seuss is and the kinds of books that he writes. But first, we are going to read one of his stories titled, "And to Think That I Saw It on Mulberry Street." When I leave home to walk to school, Dad always says to me, "Marco, keep your eyelids up and see what you can see." But when I tell him where I've been and what I think I've seen, he looks at me and sternly says, "Your eyesight's much too keen. Stop telling such outlandish tales. Stop turning minnows into whales." Now, what can I say when I get home today? All the long way to school and all the way back, I've looked and I've looked and I've kept careful track. But all that I've noticed, except my own feet, was a horse and a wagon on Mulberry Street. That's nothing to tell of. That won't do, of course. Just a broken down wagon that's drawn by a horse. That can't be my story. That's only a start. I'll say that a zebra was pulling that cart, and that is a story that no one can beat when I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. Yes, the zebra is fine, but I think it's a shame. Such a marvelous beast with a cart that's so tame. The story would really be better to hear if the driver I saw were a charioteer. A golden blue chariot's something to meet, rumbling like thunder down Mulberry Street. No, it won't do at all. A zebra's too small. A reindeer is better. He's fast and he's fleet, and he'd look mighty smart on old Mulberry Street. Hold on a minute. There's something wrong. A reindeer hates the way it feels to pull a thing that runs on wheels. He'd be much happier instead if he could pull a fancy sled. A reindeer and a sleigh? Say anyone could think of that. Jack or Fred or Joe or Nat. Say even Jane could think of that. But it isn't too late to make one little change. A sleigh and an elephant. There's something strange. I'll pick one with plenty of power and size, a blue one with plenty of fun in his eyes. And then, just to give him a little more tone, have a Raja with rubies perched high on a throne. Say, that makes a story that no one can beat when I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. But now, I don't know. It still doesn't seem right. An elephant pulling a thing that's so light would whip it around in the air like a kite. But he'd look simply grand with a great big brass band. A band that's so good it should have someone to hear it, but it's going so fast that it's hard to keep people near it. I'll put on a trailer. I know they won't mind if a man sits and listens while hitched on behind. But now, is it fair? Is it fair what I've done? I'll bet those wagons weigh more than a ton. That's really too heavy a load for one beast. I'll give him some helpers. He needs two at least. But now what worries me is this: Mulberry Street runs into bliss. Unless there's something I can fix up, there will be an awful traffic mix up. It takes police to do the trick, to guide them through where traffic's thick. It takes police to do the trick. They'll never crash now. They'll race at top speed with Sergeant Mulvaney himself in the lead. The mayor is there and he thinks it is grand, and he raises his hat as they dash by the stand. The mayor is there and the aldermen too, all waving big banners of red, white, and blue. And that is a story that no one can beat when I say that I saw it on Mulberry Street. With a roar of its motor, an airplane appears and dumps out confetti while everyone cheers. And that makes a story that's really not bad, but it still could be better. Suppose that I add a boy who eats with chopsticks, a big magician doing tricks, a 10-foot beard that needs a comb. No time for more. I'm almost home. I swung round the corner and dashed through the gate. I ran up the steps and I felt simply great. For I had a story that no one could beat, and to think that I saw it on Mulberry Street. But Dad said quite calmly, "Just draw up your stool and tell me the sights on the way home from school." There was so much to tell, I just couldn't begin. Dad looked at me sharply and pulled at his chin. He frowned at me sternly from there in his seat. Was there nothing to look at? No people to greet? Did nothing excite you or make your heart beat? Nothing, I said, growing red as a beet, but a plain horse and wagon on Mulberry Street. So that's a pretty fun and silly story written by Dr. Seuss. So now what we are going to do is learn a little bit more about Dr. Seuss and how we can spot a Dr. Seuss book. So let me share my screen and pull up a Scholastic News that we are going to read together.
This is Dr. Seuss. He wrote and illustrated 45 books. When you pick up a book, how can you tell he wrote it? You can look on the cover, his name is right there, but then open the book, you'll find clues everywhere. It must be Dr. Seuss. If you want to know if a book is by Dr. Seuss, here are some things to look for. Look for wacky machines. Dr. Seuss drew machines with gears, hooks, handles, and cranks. Some have hands and legs. His vehicles often have extra wheels and propellers. Some of his machines are funny because they have a lot of parts, but they do very simple things. Look for funny rhymes. Many of his books rhyme. Those rhymes make us laugh. They are surprising. He often puts more than one rhyme in a sentence. Look for zany stories. Dr. Seuss wrote fiction. Fiction is made up. Some fiction seems a lot like real life, but the fiction of Dr. Seuss is really wild. There are all kinds of animals in his books that don't really exist. They can often talk, and they go on adventures. Events happen that would never happen in real life. Look for made-up words. Dr. Seuss had a lot of fun with his writing. He made up so many words and names. Do you think these made-up words look like their pictures? Gritch, goo-goo goggles, zizzer, zazzer, zuzz. Look for silly characters. His characters have a look. Many of them wear hats. Many of them have big bellies and scraggly fur. Dr. Seuss often drew them with a black outline and a bright color inside. There's something else unusual about his characters. Look at the pupils of their eyes. That's the black part in the middle. The characters in Dr. Seuss books have U-shaped pupils.
Okay, which ones are by Dr. Seuss? Look at the pictures and read the words below. Okay, let's see. We have two different pictures here. Which one do we think is from Dr. Seuss? Which one is by Dr. Seuss? Well, if we look at these two pictures, this one is definitely by Dr. Seuss. We can see how silly it looks, right? Look at the scraggly hair. Let's look here at words. Okay, so remember, he sometimes makes up different words. So let's listen to the two passages and see which one we think is from Dr. Seuss. Lisa sat down with corduroy on her lap and began to sew a button on his overalls. I like you the way you are, she said, but you'll be more comfortable with your shoulder strap fastened. Okay, let's read over here. New goo, blue goo, gooey gooey, blue goo, new goo, gluey gluey. Gooey goo for chewy chewing. That's what that goo goose is doing. Okay, which words do you think were written by Dr. Seuss? Go ahead and think for a second. If you said this one, that's correct. Look at all of those silly words and made up words and how the words here rhyme. Okay, here are two more pictures. Which one do we think was drawn by Dr. Seuss? What do we think? If you said this red fish, you are correct. We can even see, if you look really carefully, the U-shaped pupil on the red fish. All right. So now what we are going to do is get out our art journal. So if everyone can find their art journal, you are going to draw your very own wacky machine. So when we read that Dr. Seuss Scholastic News, we got to see that one thing that we see in Dr. Seuss books a lot are wacky machines. So you get to create your very own. So in your art journal, you'll find a blank page. You will draw your wacky machine. Go ahead and label some of the parts of your wacky machine. Does it have extra wheels? Does it do something unique or fun or silly? Okay, so make sure to label the parts of your wacky machine and maybe write a sentence about what your wacky machine does. And make sure to submit a picture of your wacky machine so that your teacher can see all of your wonderful creations.